This is Dan Meyer with the RCR Wireless News at the Mobil World Congress show in Barcelona, Spain. I'm here with Dan Hayes, who's now with Price Waterhouse Coppers. I shouldn't say now with, I guess you're now with Price Waterhouse Coppers. You were before with PRTM, now with Price Waterhouse Coppers. Well, Dan, thanks so much for joining us today. Maybe I guess we'll have a little discussion on the small cell market. That's been kind of, I don't know about an overall tone of the show, but I've talked with a few companies, and it seems like there's been quite a bit of talk about kind of the small cell market and how that's kind of getting steam, especially with this move to kind of this data wave that's coming on with consumers. It seems like small cells are getting a lot of steam. What, I guess, maybe your general overall view of the market and what maybe you've seen here at the show, kind of looking at the small cell market?
Yeah, well, the data tsunami is really what's hitting the operators, and I think that in many ways they're now looking for the first time to radically overhaul their whole network architecture. We see small cells and really the broader concept of heterogeneous networks as a key strategy for the operators to take what's now become a scale network of macro cell sites and actually turn it into something that's much more tailored and configured to the local demand and the local capacity that's required in an individual cell site. So small cells are a critical element of that. From our perspective, the operators that we work with are very interested in small cells, but they're used to managing maybe thousands or tens of thousands of macro cell sites. A typical cell site today, in a mature Western market, might cost $300,000 to build, for example. If you're talking about a small cell, which is much more economical and much more brings a lower capacity but more flexibility, you need to, as an operator, rethink how you're going to execute that. You can't spend the same amount of money doing zoning and engineering and deploying a site. You've got to be nimble, you've got to be flexible.
Yeah, that's a good point, though, because it does seem like for carriers, like you said, they have traditionally for 20, 30 years now been focused on those big towers. You put up a big tower, you cover 10 square miles or whatever, and you kind of go from there. But it does seem like this is definitely a rethinking of the whole architecture of what they're going to do. Are you seeing that the carriers, though, are open to it? Because carriers have traditionally been very stuck in their ways and not wanting to change a lot. This is definitely a rethinking and a quick rethinking. It's happened very quick. Are they getting more and more open to it at a rapid enough pace to stay ahead of it, do you think? Or are they still maybe a little behind the 8 ball and are kind of going to be for a while?
So in some ways, small cells are an evolution, and in some ways they're a revolution. The evolutionary part of it is really building on the successes that carriers have had with in-building systems and distributed antenna systems, or DAS. Really, those are elements of small cells or small cell-like architectures that fit this heterogeneous network approach. But the operators have now had the better part of a decade to prove out the models for those in-building systems and DAS systems. Small cells are now requiring a significant change, because they may, in the end, depending upon how things evolve, they could even spell the end of macro cell sites as we know it.
Does it seem like now going forward that the need or the desire to build more macro sites, greenfield macro sites, is kind of being diminished? Do you think, in the U.S., for instance, it seems like coverage, nationwide is fairly good. There's still some pockets where there's not much coverage where a macro site might make sense, kind of in a rural area. But it's just kind of looking at maybe the end of the great expansion of macro sites. Are we kind of to the point now where we don't need more of those and it's all about filling in the holes now?
Yeah, I don't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but somewhere on the order of 95 or 98% of the world's population is now covered by cellular sites, right? Mostly macro sites. And so I think the time has come to think about how you support the densification of that coverage, and small cells are going to be important for that. Will we see the end of macro sites? No, not anytime soon. We've got decades probably before we go down that path. But are we seeing a big change? Absolutely. I think that the small cell architectures are going to provide an opportunity for operators, both new and proven, to rethink that. Now, the other interesting thing, however, is that we do, and I would actually disagree a little bit with your statement about, are we going to see people taking down sites? We actually are seeing people taking down cell sites now, and the reason for that is twofold. First of all, there's increases and improvements in network technology that's enabling you to get greater capacity and greater coverage out of an individual site. So things like tower top electronics are actually increasing the power of an individual site. The other thing that's happening, and we expect to see a lot more of it in the years to come, is that legacy networks, particularly 2G and some of the early 3G networks, which are much less efficient than 4G networks, are actually now being deconstructed and decommissioned, and we expect that particularly 2012 and 2013 are going to be the years that we start to see many of the more mature operators start to shut down their legacy networks and refarm that spectrum so that it can be used for 4G and be used to implement small cells.